Let's get right to it. The case of United States of America versus Sean Diddy Combs is not just some celebrity scandal. It's a high-stakes legal battle with life-altering consequences. The federal government has brought the full weight of its power against him, leveling charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. These aren't just words. They allege that Mr. Combs operated his businesses and his life as a criminal enterprise designed to exploit people for sex through force, fraud, or coercion. This is the heart of the prosecution's argument, that he wasn't just a powerful executive, but the leader of an organization that systematically engaged in serious federal crimes. The timeline leading to this moment in a Manhattan courtroom has been a whirlwind of public accusations and legal maneuvers. It started gaining serious momentum in November 2023 with the civil lawsuit filed by his former partner Cassie Ventura, which was settled almost immediately. Then came the bombshell in May 2024, a deeply disturbing video from 2016 showing Mr. Combs physically assaulting Miss Ventura. This footage cemented a public image of violence, but the federal indictment in April 2025 took it much further, transforming these allegations from civil disputes and public relations nightmares into a fight for his freedom against the United States government itself. Now, as the trial unfolds in June 2025, the defense team is pushing back with a clear and forceful message. Their central argument is that the prosecution has built its case on a foundation of sand. They contend the government has taken isolated incidents, personal failings, and even consensual, if unconventional, lifestyle choices, and twisted them to fit the narrow and severe definitions of trafficking and racketeering. The defense insists that while some of the behavior described may be unseemly or even immoral, it does not rise to the level of the specific heinous crimes he is charged with. The defense strategy is therefore not necessarily to prove that Mr. Combs is a saint, but to argue that he is not a federal criminal as defined by the indictment. They are drawing a hard line in the legal sand, demanding that the prosecution prove every single element of these very serious charges beyond a reasonable doubt. They argue the government is engaging in a classic bait and switch, using the shock value of a violent video and sensational testimony about parties to prejudice the jury and fill in the gaps where concrete evidence of a criminal enterprise simply does not exist. You have to understand, words matter in a courtroom. They have precise legal meanings, and the defense is hammering this point home every single day of this trial. One of the most critical distinctions they are making is the difference between solicitation and sex trafficking. These two things are not the same, not even close, and confusing them could lead to a catastrophic miscarriage of justice. The defense argues that the prosecution is deliberately blurring this line, and we need to be crystal clear on what separates them, because a man's life hangs in the balance. Solicitation at its core involves asking or encouraging someone to engage in prostitution. It's often a misdemeanor or a lower-level felony. It is a serious issue, but it is fundamentally different from the federal crime of trafficking. For example, if testimony alleges that someone arranged for a commercial sex worker to be at a party, that could be evidence of solicitation. The defense argues that even if the jury believes some of these claims about hotel nights or parties, it points towards solicitation at worst, not the explosive charge of trafficking that prosecutors have laid at Mr. Combs's feet. Sex trafficking, on the other hand, is a monstrous crime with a much higher legal bar. To prove trafficking, the prosecution must show that a person was obtained or transported for commercial sex through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. This is the key element, the lack of consent, the element of control. It's not just about arranging a sexual encounter. It's about compelling someone to participate against their will through violence, threats, lies, or manipulation. The defense is adamant that the government has failed to provide credible, specific evidence of this critical element in Mr. Combs's case. This distinction is the entire ballgame. If the prosecution cannot prove force, fraud, or coercion, the trafficking charge collapses. The defense contends that witnesses describing being flown to parties or paid for their time does not automatically equate to coercion. They argue these were adults making their own choices, however questionable those choices might seem to us. The potential sentence for trafficking, especially under the RICO statute, can be life in prison. For solicitation, it is dramatically less. This massive difference in consequence is why the defense is fighting so hard to make the jury see the gap between what is being alleged and what the law actually requires for a conviction. A prosecutor's case is only as strong as its evidence and the witnesses who present it. Mr. Combs' defense team knows this, and they are systematically working to dismantle the government's narrative piece by piece. A major part of their strategy is to challenge the credibility and motives of the accusers and witnesses who have taken the stand. They are painting a picture of individuals who may have financial incentives, personal vendettas, or other reasons to provide testimony that is not entirely truthful. This isn't just about creating doubt, it's about exposing what they claim are fundamental flaws in the prosecution's case. Take, for instance, the formal accusation of perjury the defense made on June 7, 2025, against witness Brianna Bongolan. This is not a minor move. By filing a letter with the judge claiming a key witness lied under oath, the defense is sending a powerful message to the jury. You cannot trust what you are hearing from the prosecution's side. They are aggressively questioning the motives of accusers who have also filed civil lawsuits, suggesting that the prospect of a large financial payout could be a powerful motivator to embellish or even fabricate stories of abuse and coercion. Furthermore, the defense is reframing the most damaging pieces of evidence. Look at the 2016 hotel video. The defense doesn't deny the violence, they can't. But they argue it is being used improperly to poison the jury. They claim that a horrific act of domestic assault, which it clearly is, does not by itself prove the existence of a years-long sex trafficking operation or a racketeering enterprise. They are essentially telling the jury, what you saw was terrible, but it is not evidence of the specific crimes my client is on trial for here today. It's a bold strategy to compartmentalize the evidence. The same approach is being applied to testimony about so-called freak-offs and paid hotel nights. Where the prosecution sees a pattern of exploitation, the defense presents a narrative of consensual, if decadent, and morally ambiguous adult behavior. They argue that these encounters, while perhaps shocking to the average person, did not involve the force, fraud, or coercion necessary for a trafficking conviction. By challenging the witness's credibility and providing an alternative context for the evidence, the defense aims to show the jury that the government's story is just that, a story, not a collection of proven facts that meet the high standard of the law. Let's not mince words. If Sean Combs is convicted on these charges, he could spend the rest of his natural life in a federal prison. The charges brought against him, particularly racketeering under the RICO Act, come with incredibly severe sentencing enhancements. When you combine allegations of leading a criminal enterprise with sex trafficking, violence, and drugs, the penalties skyrocket. This isn't a slap on the wrist. This is the legal equivalent of a death sentence for his freedom. The defense is using this brutal reality to frame their entire closing argument. Because the stakes are so astronomically high, the defense argues that the jury's duty to scrutinize the evidence must be equally high. This is the cornerstone of their plea. They are reminding the court that in the American justice system, the burden of proof rests entirely on the prosecution. It is not Mr. Combs' job to prove his innocence. It is the government's job to prove his guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. And when a conviction means locking a man away forever, reasonable doubt takes on an even more profound and serious meaning. The defense's final message to the jury is a direct challenge. Where is the undeniable proof? They argue that the government has presented a case built on innuendo, sensationalism, and the testimony of witnesses with questionable motives. They insist that the prosecution has failed to connect the dots between Mr. Combs' personal behavior and the operation of a bona fide criminal enterprise as required by the RICO statute. They contend that the government has not presented a single piece of irrefutable evidence showing that any specific individual was trafficked through force, fraud, or coercion. Ultimately, the defense's position is that a maybe or a probably is not good enough. Not when a man's life is on the line. They are asking the jury to look past the celebrity, the headlines, and the shocking video, and to focus solely on the letter of the law. They are demanding that the jury hold the prosecution to the highest possible standard. The defense's closing argument will be a powerful reminder that suspicion is not evidence and allegation is not proof. In a case with consequences this severe, they will argue, the government must provide a mountain of concrete facts, not a cloud of speculation.